Now, how do you feel about these trade deals we have with Mexico and Canada and
Well, I support free trade, but it has to be fair. You know, you have to have a level playing field with the competitors around the world. You have to have the same treatment of the employees. And if a certain country is treating a tariff differently or an item differently than we would, then perhaps maybe we need a tariff on some goods that may be coming in to keep that level playing field. And we have to take care of the American employees.
like I hear complaints that our truckers can't go into Mexico without being harassed by the police and everything else, and they can come up here without meeting any of the guidelines.
Well, I'm pretty disappointed in that option. You know, just like in the airline industry, an airline from around the world can land in the United States, but what they can't do is go from Boston to Chicago to Phoenix to pick up passengers in the country. They have to come in at one location and then leave, go back to their home country or to another country. With this option of the Mexican truckers coming in and be able to go around our country, I don't think that's right, because they're paying different wages, different insurances, different licensing requirements. We got to get a handle on that. That was not right.
Okay. JC?
Why is that? Why aren't they allowed to go from place to place?
Well, it's
Once they land here.
well, number one, where the airlines are registered. It also unfairly competes with our business here. We see the same thing in the shipping industry. If you ever notice, most ships from around the world are registered, and I think it's Liberia. Low tariffs, gives them a place to register their ships. And the same thing would happen with other industries if you allow that to happen.
Right. And what are some of the other issues you differ from your opponent?
Well, about 5 years ago, our federal government gave us tax decreases, reduction of taxes. I support keeping those tax cuts permanent. Those tax cuts are worth about $4,000 to each and every family member of the 5th District. $4,000. You got an extra $4,000 you want to send to Washington? I don't either. And most of the people in the 5th District do. You do?
Yeah.
Well, then you can send it to my campaign. But no, seriously, most people in this district don't have an extra $4,000, and that's what it would cost the average family. That's a car payment over the course of a year. That could be a great start to a down payment on a home for a young family. I firmly support keeping the tax cuts permanent. My opponent wants to eliminate the tax cuts and burden the families with that extra $4,000. I think the answer is in Washington, D.C. We've got to get a handle on wasteful spending. We spend too much money in Washington, D.C. Both parties are guilty of it. And I'm very disappointed of what's happened over the last 8-10 years of this wasteful spending we're getting down in Washington and this budget deficit that's out of control. We need to get a handle on that. But we also have these problems with these projects around the country, these bridges to nowhere. This morning on the news I was reading where over the past year they estimate that it was $160 million of federal money, extra federal money paid to send people around the country on airlines for upgrades. They were getting business class or first class when they should have been in coach. It cost the taxpayers an extra $160 million last year. That's just on the federal side, on the government side, not counting the military side. There was a few weeks back, there was a report out on the military side of the house on where they didn't collect reimbursements for airline tickets, and it was close to $200 million. This is a lot of waste of our money. Before we have big government, we need to get a handle on the money that we're sending down there right now and how we're spending it.
Now, one of the things that I've seen your advertising seems to be you're not a Washington insider.
I'm not.
And so how does a non-Washington insider go to Washington and make change?
Well, I think I represent what the Founding Fathers envisioned. Guy that grew up on a small family farm. Guy that served his country in the military. The guy you live next door to. Not a lifelong politician. Part of the problem we have in Washington, if you track how people vote on spending bills, the longer they're there, the more secure they are in the job, the more they vote for wasteful spending. And that's part of the problem down there. We got a bunch of career, lifetime politicians in Washington, and what you get with them is more of the same every time you reelect them. I'm not a Washington insider. I'm not a partisan politician. I don't care if it's a Democrat idea, a Republican idea. If it's a good idea for America and a good idea for the 5th District, then doggone it, why don't we do it? That's the way I'd look at bills. how they affect the 5th District and the country. And, you know, my opponent says she's been to Washington for a long time. She's even touted herself as a Washington insider. She's brought in a lot of Washington people to help prop her up, and that's not the endorsement I want. I don't want the endorsement of a bunch of politicians. I want the endorsement of people who get out of bed every day to work a job or maybe 2 jobs just to provide for their families. Because when I go to Washington, I'm not going to represent politicians. I'm going to represent the people of the 5th District. You have to wonder who someone who props themselves up with a bunch of politicians, whose best interest they have at heart.
Okay. How do you feel like, as an outsider, if you got elected, you'd be like the only Republican congressman from Massachusetts?
Wouldn't it be nice if we had 2-party representation for a change in the state?
And if you go into a Democratic Congress, how would that? How does that work?
Well, I'll be one of 435.
Yeah.
And I would be the junior member of Congress for about 3 weeks, because there's another election coming up in 3
Right.
weeks after this one. But I honestly believe one person can make a difference. I served my country in the Air Force, Air National Guard for 28 years. I made a difference. I worked hard. I think I served honorably, and I did a great job. I think one person in Congress can make a difference. Andrew Jackson said, "One man with courage makes a majority." I plan on going to Washington, stand by my convictions, stand by what I represent here in the 5th District, and bring that 5th District hardworking values, just the same values I learned growing up on a family farm, take those to Washington, D.C., and I think one person can make a difference.
Okay. What other issues or items in, how do you feel about constituencies and handling them? And would you have an office in the district?
Oh, absolutely. I'd definitely have an office in the district. And the nice thing about living in New England is you have that flexibility of getting back and forth to Washington so quickly. Typical congressional schedule allows you to be back in the district for a couple to 4 days a week, which is outstanding. Whereas members of Congress from the other side of the country,
Right.
don't have that flexibility with airline schedules. It's a lot longer travel. But definitely have office hours each and every week and meeting with the constituents. But I'm also planning, normally what you see is when someone's coming into the office, they're already pretty upset with things. My plan is to always be out. I have season tickets to the University of Lowell hockey. Always be accessible. I always continue to go out and meet the people of the district each and every day. When I go through the Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's, I tend to get out of the car and go in to say hello to people and see what's on people's minds. Because many times, as you're running for office, our lips are moving all the time. We're always talking.
Yep.
But I personally love to get out with people and sit down and listen to see what's on their mind. Because there's a lot of people in this district, and each and every one of them has a story and they have some opinions, and they're great people, and their views need to be represented in Washington. How can you represent them if you don't listen?
Point. We're running short on time. I want to give you a chance to look at the camera, ask for the vote.
I would. Thank you very much. And I'm disappointed in elected officials in Washington that they play so many partisan games with the issues today. I think it's time for a revolution of new ideas and new thinking in Washington, D.C. I'm not a partisan politician. I think I represent what our founding fathers envisioned on someone going to Washington, D.C. I had the great pleasure of growing up in the 5th District. My family's been here for 100 years. I've raised my children here. I want to go to Washington to make this district a better place for my children and for future generations, because I hope my children will want to raise their children here in the 5th District. And with your support, I'd like to go to Washington, D.C. I need your vote on October 16th, and I ask you for that vote, and I'll make this pledge to you. When I'm in Washington, D.C., my interest will always be the interest of the 5th District and not special interest. Thank you very much. My pleasure to be on again.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.